Hey guys, this is Candle, and it is time for another collection update. It's been a little bit of a while. I haven't really bought too much over the last couple months, mostly because I was saving up for big ticket purchases. Like I got a brand new monitor, which is why the angle on the camera here might be a little bit different, and a new desk and other things. But I went out yesterday and today and bought a bunch of stuff. So I want to show it off to you guys because I can. So first off, one of the big ticket purchases I got was actually an Oculus Rift S. Now I picked this up. I already had an Oculus Rift, but I picked this up simply because I don't use my Oculus Rift that much, mostly because it is a pain in the ass to set up. Because it has external sensors, I have to make sure everything's aligned correctly and stuff like that. Whereas the Oculus Rift S, it uses inside-out tracking, so there are no external sensors. It's all built into the headset itself. And I almost got an Oculus Quest 2 instead because it's supposed to be a little bit better, but I was worried that I wouldn't be able to hook it up to my PC correctly through the link cable and stuff like that. So I just went with the Oculus Rift S because I really did want to use the power of my computer for VR rather than the Quest 2, which is like purely just in the headset. I'm not entirely thrilled about giving Facebook this much control over my life, since you have to log into a Facebook account in order to use an Oculus Rift, but most of the VR games I'm purchasing nowadays are through Steam anyways, so that's fine. But yeah, it is a lot of fun to use it. It's much better than the original Oculus Rift, which I had, and I ended up playing some VR games that had been on my backlog for a while, like Super Hot VR was a lot of fun. Res Infinite was a lot of fun. That's basically just the original Res and Res HD just in VR, but it's still quite a bit of fun there to play. I also, what else did I play in VR? Star Wars Squadrons, which was really cool, sitting inside, you know, an X-Wing cockpit, a TIE Fighter cockpit, and stuff like that. Although I don't think they got the scale quite right, because I could tell, you know, in the briefing rooms when we're supposedly standing, the floor was still the same place like where it was when I'm sitting in my chair playing, and I feel like characters were a little scaled down because of that, and maybe the cockpits felt a little bit tighter than they should have because of that. They were still like decent enough, but it was still a lot of fun. Annoying to get the VR set up correctly, unfortunately. I ran into some hiccups with that, mostly because of my new computer monitor, which is a 4K HDR display. And Star Wars Squadrons, if it detects that you have a 4K or an HDR display hooked up, it will automatically switch to HDR, and there is no button in the game, no toggle in the game to switch back out of it anymore, which screwed up colors in VR. And beyond that, I also had some software for the computer monitor hooked up that was causing the game to minimize every time, like after a couple seconds, it would minimize. And in VR, that's not such an issue because it wouldn't drag me out of the game, but it did cut off the sound. I couldn't hear anything anymore, so it took me a while to get that sorted out, but I did, and I still played it. It was a lot of fun. What else did I play in VR? Oh, let me open up Steam. That'll show me. Hold on a second. Sorry, my computer just rebooted. I just had a power outage for a second, so my computer just rebooted, and I have to do everything here. While that does that, I will also talk about a couple other things I picked up. I picked up Bravely Default 2. I'm excited to play this. I haven't touched it yet. It's actually still sealed. I was wanting to wait until I finished Bravely Default 1 and Bravely 2nd before diving into Bravely Default 2, but I may not do that simply because it is... it's basically a standalone game. It's not directly tied to the other Bravely games outside of basically mechanics and aesthetic. I think it might even be set in a different world. I'm not entirely sure on that, so don't quote me on that. But it makes more sense, you know, learning that it's a different story with a different cast of characters, that they called it Bravely Default 2 instead of Bravely Third, because this is actually the third game in the series. You know, you had Bravely Default, or as it was called in Japan, Bravely Default Flying Fairy, and then you had Bravely Second Endlayer, which was a direct sequel to that, and now we have Bravely Default 2. Okay, so that other game in VR I played was Adrift, which is where you're on a space station floating around trying to figure out what happened. That was a lot of fun too, just exploring that and stuff. Another brand new game I just picked up, well, the game itself isn't brand new, but it's new to me, and I bought it new, is the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, which is the original 3 Crash Bandicoot games completely remastered, remade for the PS4 with a couple new bonus levels. I'm excited to try this out. I didn't really get too much into the original Crash Bandicoot games. I have them. I've played through them. I didn't really get too much into them though, but I'm excited to try this out, and maybe I'll pick up Crash 4 eventually as well. But speaking of Crash Bandicoot, sorry, I got other stuff falling around here. Speaking of Crash Bandicoot, I did also pick up the original copy of CTR, Crash Team Racing. This is basically the Crash Bandicoot version of Mario Kart. This is not the remake, though. That would be on the PS4. I'll get that eventually. But one of the reasons why I picked up the Crash trilogy on PS4 is because of Crash's history with the PlayStation system. So with CTR now, I think I'm only missing one PS1 Crash game, which is Crash Bash, which is basically like a Mario Party style game. So this is supposed to be pretty good, though. CTR is supposed to be really good. So I'm interested in playing this, but I probably won't touch it until I can get the remake on PS4. But I did also pick up Oddworld's Apes Exodus, which is another game with a remake coming out soon called Soulstorm. And Oddworld Inhabitants is an odd developer. They set out with with Oddworld 1, Abe's Odyssey. They said, hey, we're going to tell this huge, gigantic 5-part story in this world. And then they did Abe's Exodus after that, which continues Abe's story. And then they did Munch's Odyssey on the original Xbox, followed that up with Stranger's Wrath. And come to find out, looking at Munch's Odyssey a little while ago, Abe's Exodus is not considered part 2 of the Oddworld quintology. It's actually considered as Abe's Odyssey part 2. So basically, as I understand it, what Oddworld wants to do is each segment of the quintology follows a completely different character. So Abe's Odyssey and Abe's Exodus are part 1. Munch's Odyssey is part 2. Stranger's Wrath, which I don't have, I think that would be considered part 3. I'm not entirely sure, but that means we're still waiting on parts 4 and 5. And they've been enamored of remaking Abe's Odyssey. They did New and Tasty a few years back, and now they're doing Abe's Exodus with Soulstorm coming up. So I am interested in that. One odd thing I find about this is it's a 2-disc game, so it's got that double wide case that is indicative of PlayStation multiple disc games. However, it's a little weird in how it does it. Normally, with a multi-disc game like this, you'll have a disc in the front and a disc in the back. Instead, there's no disc in the front here. It doesn't even have the thing to push in for the disc in the front. The only time I've seen this before was on Suikoden, which is a single disc game, yet somehow shipped in a double wide case, probably either because the manual was so thick it wouldn't fit in a single case, or because a lot of RPGs at the time were multi-disc games, so they were coming in these thicker cases. No, Abe's Exodus instead has both discs in the back, which is really, really odd. You don't normally see that. Again, it may have just been because, this is a pretty thick manual here, so they may have done that because they were concerned about, the manual screwing things up. But I don't know. It seems weird to me that there's no disc in the front for this. But beyond that, I also got Final Fantasy Explorers on the 3DS. This is the only Final Fantasy game on the 3DS I was missing, because the only other ones released were the Theater Rhythm games, I'm pretty sure. And those are, rhythm games. And this one is explore a new world with solo or together with 2 to 4 player co-op. So this is supposed to be a co-op game. So I'm a little bit interested in this. It's not... I haven't heard great things about it, though, unfortunately. But I am a bit of a whore for Final Fantasy. So it's obvious at some point I had to pick it up. Speaking of which, I just dropped a ton of money on some things that are kind of rare and expensive for Final Fantasy. I got the Final Fantasy Anthology Official Strategy Guide. This thing cost me like $50. And it is in really, really good condition, though. But it covers 5 and 6, specifically the PS1 versions of 5 and 6. And I am very, very glad to have this, because now it means I have all the official strategy guides for Final Fantasy V, because the only other official strategy guide in the West for 5 is Final Fantasy V Advance. I already have that one. And the only strategy guide I'm missing now for Final Fantasy VI is for 6 Advance. So that is good to have as well. I also, from that same era, have the Final Fantasy Chronicles strategy guide. This one was a little bit cheaper. So this actually covers Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy IV, and I love the way they did this because it's basically you flip it over. So this side is Chrono Trigger, and it says, you know, see also Final Fantasy IV on the flip side. Like literally, it's reversed. So that way, you know, whichever way you're going, you're going from the front. But it's great to have that as well. You know, it's the first time I have an actual guide for Chrono Trigger, which is one of my all-time favorite games. This one wasn't as expensive. It was only $20. But Final Fantasy Tactics A2 Grimoire of the Rift. I have not actually played this game. It's on the Nintendo DS. It's basically a sequel to Final Fantasy Tactics, except it's not, because Final Fantasy Tactics is not set in Evil East proper, and I'm pretty sure Tactics A2 is. So, yeah. But beyond that, another Evil East game, I have the guide for Final Fantasy Tactics: The War of the Lions. This was the most expensive. This was $70. I think it's probably because they didn't make that many of them, and so they didn't make that many of them. They didn't sell that well to begin with, and RPGs to begin with are always kind of rare. But it's definitely good to have this because I'm probably going to need this at some point. I do want to Let's Play Final Fantasy Tactics at some point. I don't know exactly when. It's definitely going to be after 9, but I might do 10 and 10-2, maybe even 12 before I do that. So definitely glad to have this, because that means now I have guides for all of the Evil East games except for Tactics and Vagrant Story, which isn't even technically a Final Fantasy game. But that's enough with the memorabilia and paraphernalia. It's back to the games. I decided to expand my NES collection. I got a stack of games here for NES. Some of these I technically already have because they're included in the NES Classic Edition, but some of these are brand new to me and I have never played them. So I have Contra, you know, classic Contra. I've played this before. This is not in the NES Classic though. They have Super C instead, which is kind of a expanded, better version of Contra. So I have Contra 1. I also have Ninja Gaiden 2. Previously, I also have Ninja Gaiden 1. I actually have that complete in box. This is literally just the cartridge though. But it's Ninja Gaiden 2, The Dark Sword of Chaos. So I'm interested to try this one out. I have Faxanadu, which I don't know too much about this game. I've heard things about it before. I think it's an RPG based on the tagline in here. Daggers and wing boots, mantras and monsters await you. So I think it's an RPG of some kind, but I'm not entirely sure. So I'm definitely interested to check this out though, because I've never really played too many NES RPGs. Mostly it's just Final Fantasy 1 and I've played a little bit of Dragon Warrior, and that's it for NES RPGs. But definitely looking towards playing this as well. I also have Tetris, because what NES collection is complete without Tetris? I will eventually have to get Tetris 2 at some point. And then the last NES game I got is on the NES Classic Edition as well, so I have played it before. It is Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest. I still need to get Castlevania 1 and 3, and then there is a separate Castlevania 2, I believe. It might be Castlevania 3 instead, on the Game Boy, that is completely different from the NES version. But yeah, definitely glad to have that as well in my collection. I still need to get the other Castlevania games for the NES though. But beyond that, I also picked up a couple PS2 games. I got Ratchet & Clank Size Matters. This is actually a port of a PSP game, and it shows a little bit in the graphics. It's not as detailed visually as the other Ratchet & Clank games on the PS2, but it is the last one I was missing. I used to have this one years ago, but I got rid of it. I didn't even finish it. I got rid of it because I was disappointed in how it looked visually. But it even says on the back, you know, the explosive PSP system adventure remastered for the PlayStation 2 system. Eventually, I'll have to get the PSP version, though. But like I said, this is the last Ratchet & Clank game I was missing. However, there is a Ratchet & Clank spin-off I was missing as well. Secret Agent Clank. I got that one as well. So this is Clank's standalone adventure. Yes, I am really looking forward to the upcoming Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart on the PS5. I'm hoping I can maybe play through these before that comes out, but we'll see. Beyond that, I just have a handful of games left, all for the GameCube, and GameCube collecting is getting a bit tough right now because prices are going up. Not just because of the pandemic, but I guess the GameCube is in vogue right now, so prices are starting to go up. Still, I got Resident Evil 4, which for some reason says 4 Resident Evil instead. But with this, it actually has the manual and everything. It's complete in box. Discs are in really good condition. But with this, I am now only missing 2 Resident Evil games on the GameCube. That would be Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil Code Veronica X. I used to own Code Veronica X on the PS2, but I don't anymore. Like I said, just alongside Ratchet and Clank Size Matters, I got rid of those games years and years ago before I was seriously becoming a collector. So I don't have them anymore, unfortunately. I used to have Resident Evil 4 on the PS2 as well, but I don't right now because of that. It was part of a trilogy pack where it was Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil Code Veronica X, and Resident Evil Outbreak, I think it was. I don't remember. It was some weird like multiplayer co-op game. So yeah. But yeah, definitely glad to have this, add it to my collection. Like I said, I already have 0, 1, and 3, so all I'm missing now is 2 and Code Veronica X. I also picked up Phantasy Star Online Episode 3, which has wildly different gameplay, apparently, than Phantasy Star Online Episodes 1 and 2, which I believe are the same as the ones on the Dreamcast, which I do have. But again, this is another one that's complete in box. The disc is in really good condition. It's got like a card game system to it. That's kind of why it's weird. I almost picked up Phantasy Star Online Episodes 1 and 2 as well. They had it, but it wasn't the original case. Like, I was seriously considered getting it, but they were asking $80 for it, and even though it still had, you know, the disc was in good condition, it still had the manual, it still had the original art from the outside, but it wasn't an official GameCube case, and I don't really want to do that if I can help it, so I passed on it for now. Maybe eventually I'll pick up like 2 copies of a really cheap GameCube game alongside that, and that way I can like trash the one of the really cheap copies of like a bad GameCube game or whatever, and recycle that case for it. I don't know. But speaking of cheaper games, this one was only $10. Bloodrayne for the GameCube. I do already have this on the original Xbox, but I wanted to get the the disc, the case is even a little bit damaged here. I didn't even notice that. But yeah, I did wanted to get this on the GameCube because I had this for the GameCube years and years ago. Actually, I had borrowed it from a friend, and he eventually asked for it back, so I had to give it back to him. And I really enjoyed the game. Unfortunately, Bloodrayne 2 never released on the GameCube. It was PC, Xbox, and PS2 only. So that's why I eventually picked up the Xbox version of Bloodrayne 1, because I do want to get the Bloodrayne 2 at some point. But I did want to have this in my collection again as well. And with that, I think there's only 3 GameCube games I had as a kid that I don't currently have now. Mario Kart Double Dash, which I know is expensive. Metroid Prime 1, which is probably expensive as well. And then Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2, which I almost picked up as well, but I passed on it this time. Mostly because I wanted to get this one. Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. This is basically an enhanced version of the Dreamcast original. And it doesn't have the manual, which really kind of sucks. But it is an official GameCube case. Although there is something odd about it. Normally GameCube cases, they've got this little hole in the bottom. I don't know why, but they have this little hole in the bottom. This one doesn't. It doesn't have that, but you do know it's a GameCube case because it's got, you know, it's got like it's got the normal everything here. It's got the memory card slot. It's got the GameCube branding. It's got, you know, the way it seals weirdly compared to like standard DVD cases. Like, if you open these two up, they look virtually identical, aside from the fact that it's not open on the bottom. And even looking at... Oh, okay. This might actually be a reproduction case. Interesting. Because it says Nintendo model number DOL-007. And that's the same thing as here. No, that says Clearview as well. So that's the manufacturer for the case. So I don't know why it's not open on the bottom like that. It's just weird. But I am glad to have that because I do have Sonic Adventure DX as well. I almost picked up Sonic Heroes, which was the last main Sonic game of this era. There was also like Shadow the Hedgehog, and then there was a Sonic Gems Genesis collection on the GameCube as well. I do want to eventually pick those up. I almost picked up Sonic Heroes, but again, I passed on it just like I did with Phantasy Star Online Episode 1 and 2. Because it didn't have the original case. So I'm fine with reproduction cases as long as they look like identical to the original. Like, this could be a reproduction case for as far as for all I know, but it looks identical to the original. I'm fine with that. Like, I have a number of boxed Genesis games that have reproduction cases, and a couple of them I know are reproduction because they're games that originally shipped only in the cardboard boxes. Like, I'm pretty sure Jungle Book originally shipped only in the cardboard box, but I have the plastic clamshell case for it. So I'm fine with reproduction cases as long as they're like similar. Like, I have a number of reproduction cases for uh, uh, original Xbox and Xbox 360, and you can tell they're reproduction because they're not the original same shade of green. Like, the original Xbox is a solid green, the Xbox 360 is kind of a translucent green, and the reproduction ones I have are even more translucent. They're more transparent. But anyways, that is all I have for now. A good collection update, I think, a good gaming pickups video, and like I said, that's all I have for now. It's probably going to be a few more months before I get more, unfortunately, but I will have newer releases as well, a ton more releases as well, and hopefully by that point I'll be able to track down in Xbox Series X. I am still trying to get my hands on one of those. It is still super hard here in late March. Hopefully that will change, but anyways, until then, I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Please remember to comment, rate, and subscribe.